Welcome to Crewe Nantwich Television. For our first interview, I'm going to interview long-term resident of 33 years, Ian MacLellan, retired teacher as well in Crewe schools, and to declare an interest, he is my dad as well, so where better place to start? So, Dad, let's first of all find out about you. Where were you born? Where did you spend your childhood?
Right, I was born in Stockport in 1944. My parents were old for my age, really. They were old to have children at the time. So I've always spent my life with elderly parents. After the war ended, my father had a great desire to start again, as a lot of people did. And we moved down to a small holding in Kent, which was where my childhood took place. I grew up the formative years on a small holding in rural Kent, where my playground was the woods, the cornfields, and way off the beaten track. A childhood that many children can't achieve today. And we stayed there for about 6 years. And my parents found financially it didn't work out, and so we moved back to Stockport. And from my teenage years, my childhood was in Stockport until I went to university in London at 18.
So you were born in 44, so
Yes.
right at the back end of World War II.
Yes.
Had you heard of Crewe Nantwich? Maybe that's a silly question. You're not too far away from it in Stockport, but what did you know of Crewe Nantwich at that time? Maybe as a teenager, young man?
Trains.
Trains.
I mean, I had, as a child, I had incredible books now, looking back, on steam trains, showing all the working parts, exploded diagrams of things, which I found fascinating. But the name of Crewe always came up somewhere. I don't remember being taught about it. It was just in my head.
People just knew it.
People just knew it, Crewe.
Had you been to Crewe?
No.
Had you passed through Crewe?
Oh yes, I've passed through Crewe many times.
Everyone's passed
on
through
the
Crewe.
Train, going back down to London in the evening, a night train. It always stopped in Crewe, and then you used to hear this dreaded sound. Tap, 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 tap. They used to tap the wheels in Crewe, and then they'd find a cracked wheel on a carriage. That was then taken out of service, and there was a lot of shunting around with us in the carriage, and then we'd set off again. But I always remember Crewe. It was a place of dread in one sense, because it meant you got held up.
Yeah. So in some ways, trains have always been quite difficult.
Yeah.
And
But
never
then
run smoothly.
I never went out of the station.
And you'd never been to Nantwich?
No.
No. Okay. So your formative years in Stockport. You went to university, as you say, in London. I know that you then went into teaching.
Yes.
And you first taught in Gloucester. So in the southwest. Go on, tell us where you
what happened
first got your teaching jobs.
I was at a London school. I was at a London Art College, and when my time finished and I got my teaching qualifications, I wanted to get back to some degree to my childhood, and so I wanted to work in a rural area, and so I chose a job. A job came up in Cirencester,
Right.
in Gloucestershire,
Yeah.
and it coincided with a very great friend of mine who also got a job in Swindon, and he bought a house in Cirencester, and I became their lodger.
Right.
That's how it happened.
So how did you come back up this way? So you're in the southwest there.
Yes.
How did you make it back to the northwest? And
Well,
I was born in Lancaster,
Yeah,
so
right.
you clearly travelled up.
yeah, well, what happened was, in my second year, with staff changing, my wife, my future wife, joined the staff. And I met your mum there, and we got married. We did finished our year, and then I was applying for promotion, and quite a big promotion, and a job came up in an area I wanted to go to, although I knew very little about it, and we moved up to Morecambe. I taught in Morecambe, we moved up to Lancaster. And while we were in Lancaster, just living outside Lancaster, that's why you were born in Lancaster.
So what took you from Lancaster, working in schools in that area, Morecambe you mentioned, back down to Crewe Nantwich? To Crewe Nantwich?
Well, what happened was, we were been in Lancaster for 3 years, 2.5 years actually, and we were, well, your mum and myself were involved through no fault of our own in a very serious car accident. And in a sense, when we came out of there, out of hospital and all the massive treatment that we undertook, had to undertake, we wanted to start again. And I was, of the two of us, I was the most seriously injured. Without going into detail, I was told your working life full-time is over, probably, otherwise you'll be constantly ill. And my wife, your mum, decided to apply for a promotion, and a very big promotion came up in Crewe as head of English in Coppenhall Hall High School, and so we moved down here.
So formerly Coppenhall, now Sir William Stanley School?
Yes, that's correct, and I just picked up a part-time job.
Which was where?
Which was at Kingsgrove.
Kingsgrove, which is now the Oaks.
Yes, I believe so.
So you moved down here.
Yes.
I was around about 6 years old.
Yes.
I know that, I'll say we now, but of course you and Mum bought a house in Williston.
Yes.
On Circular Avenue in
Yes.
Williston. Crewe Nantwich residents, some of them will know that.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time, of course, in Crewe schools, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
Just before we get to that, now you've mentioned the car accident,
Yes.
and you know, as a family, we know it as the accident.
Yes.
And you said, well, at the time, over a minute or two ago, that you wouldn't go into details. I'm going to.
Yeah, you're in the program. Okay.
A little bit.
Okay. Right.
So, just describe to people what happened to you. What was the accident?
Right. We went down during half term. We decided we'd go down to Gloucestershire to see some friends from the previous job we'd been in. And we went down there and we stayed a few days and we set off and we came up the M5 motorway, and it was 1:10 in the afternoon. It started to drizzle. I remember that. I remember switching on the windscreen wipers. And then suddenly, ahead of me, a lorry appeared, coming through, smashing through the crash barriers. And we hit it head on at 70 miles an hour. There was no chance of avoiding it, no chance of braking, just hit it head on, 70 miles an hour. And just before the impact, I thought, this is where we go. And it was, in fact, where we went. Because I ended up, over the next 12 hours, apparently having 4 cardiac arrests. It was doubtful I would live. I had massive blood transfusions, 17 fractures, 13 of them compound fractures, which means the bones came through my flesh.
Yeah.
I can remember sitting in the car while the firemen were cutting me out, being fascinated by my bone sticking out through my trouser leg. It had punched its way through that much. So, you know, and of course we were absolutely bathing in blood, and then I can't remember any more for about 6 weeks.
So, as accidents go,
it was a big one. It was a big one.
I know you're not a superstitious person,
No.
but you have talked about the accident with me before.
Yes.
And I know you've actually talked to the students who I teach at Brian Lee School, because I've invited you in to speak to sixth formers.
Yes.
And you have described the sense that you felt you were dying.
Yes.
And you've mentioned to me before that you could draw for me the layout of the vehicles as if you're having an aerial view of it.
Yes, I can remember. I clearly can remember being like a drone hovering over the scene. 2 fire engines alongside me, alongside the car. The roof had been taken off the car and the front to get me out. And I can just remember that scene so clearly. Now, whether it's just a figment of my imagination or whether it was true, I've never had anybody corroborate it. But that's what I believed.
And how was Mum?
She was less injured than I was. It was very traumatic because I came to and we were sitting on the hard shoulder in the car facing the opposite direction. I could work that one out. This was after the impact. And I thought my immediate reaction was, better get out and swap names and addresses with the driver, which is a ludicrous thing to say, to think. And I went to get out the car and I couldn't move my arm and I was just bathing in blood, absolutely bathing in blood. And I turned and looked at Mum and I thought, we're going nowhere. We are going nowhere. That's it.
So you were in hospital for how long?
Well, Mum was in hospital for 5 months and I was in hospital for 7 months in Worcester. Because it was the M5, it was between the South Junction for Worcester and the North Junction. I used to know where it was, but I can't see it now because what happened was it was in the day when the motorway, the M5 motorway, was 2 lanes at that point, and they changed it to 3. So I'm not sure quite where it was. Not
so,
that it matters.
In some ways, no wonder the need for a fresh start.
And
Crewe Nantwich represented that fresh start.
it could have been somewhere else, but it just so happened the job came up in Crewe Nantwich.
How do you think the accident shaped you? I don't think you can go through a life event like that, a key life event, without, I suppose, fundamentally being changed from it. Did it change your perspective on things and the things that you've done, your outlook?
I can't honestly say that because I don't know what would have happened.
No.
But I think my life has gone on a parallel track. It wouldn't have been that much different, I don't think. But I'm on the other track, and I think it made me less ambitious, I think.
In a career sense?
In a career sense. People, you see, I've witnessed over my life that people strive and strive and strive, and they get on in life and they work hard, and then they're cut down by a heart attack, and they're in their 40s or 50s. What's the point? And so I've never done that. I've never had a heart attack since the accident.
No. And I think by and large, you've health-wise, apart from the accident, you've done okay.
Yeah, I've done okay. I've got bits and bobs.
I mean, you're 80 years old.
I've got bits and bobs wrong with it, which is inevitable. But
you're 80.
I'm 80.
Largely fit and well. So Crewe Nantwich represents that fresh start for you. And of course you then start working in Crewe schools. And we've mentioned initially Coppenhall, then the Oaks, or as was then King's Grove, and then St Thomas More. I suppose what we...
And about in Chester.
Yes, you taught further afield as well. What was your initial impressions of the Crewe Nantwich area?
Well, compared to Lancaster, when we moved there, I can very well remember it was a town that had completely collapsed in the sense that its reason for being had gone. Cotton.
This is Lancaster.
This is Lancaster. Cotton. It also made huge quantities of linoleum, apparently, and that had gone. And it was poor, very poor. It took a time to come from Gloucestershire to go to Lancaster. Took a time to assimilate, really. Like we went into just after we got there, we went into a shop and asked for spaghetti. And the guy behind the counter said, "Yes, sir," bent down under the counter and put a tin on the table in front of us, on the counter in front of me. And I said, "No, I don't want tin spaghetti.
You want dry spaghetti?
I want dry, long stick spaghetti."
So this was in the 1970s, 80s?
Yeah, this is the late 70s. And he said, "Oh, we don't get any call for that here, sir."
You moved down to Crewe Nantwich 93?
Yes, about that time.
So was Crewe Nantwich a place where you would get your dried spaghetti? How was it different from Lancaster? So you mentioned that Lancaster was
you got dried spaghetti.
Was it greater wealth? And you felt that in Crewe Nantwich?
Well, yeah. I mean, the only thing that paid the high salaries in Lancaster was the university.
Yeah.
But the lecturers and professors didn't live in Lancaster, they lived out of Lancaster. Yeah. But it nevertheless had that air about it. And it was the university that brought Lancaster into the 20th century quicker than it would have done.
So, Crewe Nantwich represented a change and a difference from Lancaster. What was your impression of Crewe schools? Or the Crewe school in particular you're out at? And
compared to the Lancaster schools?
Well, yeah, I suppose you can make that comparison. I mean, I work in a Nantwich school, but it still gives me an impression of the educational landscape for Crewe and Nantwich, even though I'm very much focused on the one school. So when you're working at Coppenhall, what was your impression of the school and I suppose the wider educational context that you're working in Crewe schools?
Well, what surprised us, this is your mum and myself, when we pitched up in Crewe schools, there was quite a big disparity between what was going on in Morecambe and Lancaster and what was happening in Crewe. And the reason for that was we're looking at a Conservative government under Margaret Thatcher, and the whole educational system had been turned on its head in a sense. In Lancaster schools, there were years 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, as we know them today. Pitched up in the schools in Crewe Nantwich, and it's years 1, 2 and 3. Right. So they hadn't made the jump.
So that, already, immediately, you noticed a change.
I noticed a change.
I was always the kid who was brought into Coppenhall. I remember it, on staff training days, or maybe I had an inset day in my school that I went to, and I was the kid who was brought in. And I actually knew some of the people who attended Crewe schools as I was a teenager, who attended Coppenhall. I played in the football team with them.
Yes, of course.
Would it be fair to say it had moments of being tough behaviourally?
Yes. It was harder.
And what would account for that tough element of it? We're talking about behaviour.
Well, I think Crewe schools are industrial schools in an industrial environment. They existed in an industrial environment.
An industrial town.
Yeah, which was declining. Nantwich schools were very much, I believe, because I didn't teach in them, I believe were more of a rural nature, rural children, which was very close to what I experienced when I first started teaching in Gloucestershire. Gloucestershire school, the school I taught at in Gloucestershire was very, very wealthy. The clientele were wealthy. Many of them were from military families, because there were some big camps around the area in Gloucestershire. Whereas in Crewe schools, there wasn't that movement of children as military families do, move their children, move their staff around. There wasn't that movement, and there was also a great insularity about it. Do I think children in Crewe get a worse education than children in Nantwich? No, I don't. No, I don't.
I certainly remember, and I met many of your former colleagues as well.
Yes.
As, you know, you had staff get-togethers and things like that. And I remember sometimes attending the staff room at Copland Hall,
Yes.
which now has been completely levelled and it's a sparkly new build in Sir William Stanley.
Sure.
But there seemed to be a camaraderie and a closeness amongst
Yes.
the staff.
Yeah.
And perhaps there had to be that.
Yes, you back each other up.
You back each other up.
Yes.
And schools rely on that, and actually that's good for the children that you teach.
Yes.
That was my impression. As I've gone through my career, you realise the importance of that togetherness. So you left Coppenhall, you went to Kingsgrove.
Yes.
Why the change?
Well, there was only Coppenhall. I only did days of supply teaching.
Right. Okay.
While I waited for a part-time job to come up.
Yeah.
And one came up in Kingsgrove, and applied for it, and I got it.
So you worked with a fellow art teacher,
Yes.
Bob Harrison.
Bob Harrison, yes.
Who, funnily enough, is the father of the current head of Malbank,
Yes.
John Harrison.
Yes.
And I know you enjoyed working with Bob.
Yeah.
Who
He's a great guy.
I remember meeting him, and you've described him as, you know, great guy to work with, and no nonsense.
Football mad.
Football mad, big Liverpool fan.
Yeah. No nonsense.
Yeah.
And he backed me up, and we backed each other up.
You were the two art teachers, weren't
Yes,
you?
we were the two art teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew some great kids in school in Crewe, absolutely great kids, and I can still remember them to this day.
Yeah.
I took some great kids on a school exchange to Poland.
Yeah, I remember.
Just after the communist government collapsed in Poland. Don't ask me how it came about, but it happened.
And that was quite big in the early mid-90s.
Oh God,
you know,
yeah.
That was a big deal.
Yeah. We went on the bus.
Yeah.
From Manchester.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hell of a journey, but what an eye opener! What an eye opener for Crewe kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember on the first evening they were all staying with families, and we all met together at a place with their partner children in Poland, and they came up to me and said, "Sir, they heat the iron on the fire." On a flat iron on the fire. I didn't know that went on still in the world.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, in Europe too.
Yeah.
You know, it was an experience. It was an experience for me.
Yeah.
Let alone them.
Yeah. And we're talking 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
How was it to teach art at Kingsgrove? You know, I'm a history teacher in the main, law and politics at A-level, but art, and I go into my art department at Brian Lee's,
Yes.
it has a calmness about it.
Yes.
The kids seem more relaxed in there.
Yes.
You often hear with children that, oh, I can't do it, I can't draw. I suppose you heard that phrase as well.
Oh, every day.
Every day, yeah.
I can't draw a straight line.
Yeah.
Neither can I.
But equally, you know, and I like going into the art department
Yes.
of schools because it does feel different from the rest of the school.
Yes.
But how do the kids take to the subject? Because it is often a sideline subject. I don't think it gets the attention that it deserves.
No, I have always said, and I would say, wouldn't I, that it's the best, if you're going to go into teaching, art is the best subject in the world to teach. And why do I say that? Well, I've done it all my life, it provided my income, but I do think it does. It is the best subject in the world in one sense, because it is a relaxed atmosphere. You're not chasing. Well, exam results are important, yes, of course they are. But you're not chasing them in the same relentless way, it strikes me, that some of the other subjects. Politically, it's been ignored. So
For both good and bad, I
for
suppose.
both good and bad.
Yeah.
But it hasn't had the interference that, say, English and maths have had, and science, from government.
I think some of the children find it therapeutic.
Yeah, they do find it therapeutic because there isn't, for those children, and there are quite a number of them who find reading and writing challenging, there is none of that, or very little of it. The subject has changed, obviously, very little of it. and
Art is that creative outlet.
art is that creative outlet.
Yeah.
The other thing is, because of the way the art rooms are arranged, children tend to work on big tables around it in sort of groups. I'm not saying they're doing group work, but they are together, and they can see what's going on their table. You set a task, and they all interpret it, to put it simply, in their own way. And there's a sort of calmness about the kids. Okay, somebody sometimes kicks off or whatever, but children can talk.
Yeah.
Well, they did in my classes.
Yeah,
I always
yeah.
let them talk. I hate art rooms that are silent because it means there's nothing going on. Children talk, and you can pick up a heck of a lot from children talking. As you just wander around helping, you know, you hear the most astonishing things. They don't think you can hear it, but I've heard the most astonishing things about home life and relationships, and I just wouldn't like to mention it. But
do you think the kids bought into the subject? Or
the majority do. The majority do.
Did you face a challenge that, you know, maybe perhaps art isn't for me and it's for other people? I don't do art.
Well,
What's the relevance of it?
I've always said to kids, I'm not teaching you to be an artist. It's not about that. That's a different thing. I'm teaching you to look, hopefully, that's what I would like to do, to teach you to look at the world around you and make sense of it. And probably, hopefully, make your life a little bit richer for it.
Yeah.
Maybe other art teachers will disagree, but that for me was it's about problem solving, sorting out the world around you that you see. It's about looking and making sense of it.
Why did you leave King's Grove to St Thomas Hall?
Well, what happened was what happened was that once again we're going into changes in education. The head came into the staff room one day and made an announcement and said, you all know about the early retirement schemes. We're overstaffed. And county, which because the schools were under county council control, say that we've got to lose a member of staff.
Just one?
Just one.
Right.
These were the early days of redundancy.
Yeah.
Which of you is going to jump? Which of you is eligible? And he spelt out the terms. You've got had to be over 50, and so on and so forth. And I thought, well, I've been smashed to high heavens. I'm in a part-time job. I've had a bout of pneumonia. I'll take early retirement. See if I'm eligible.
How old were you then?
54.
54, yeah.
And I wasn't forced out.
Yeah.
I applied. I was told by the authorities that I had so many years that were pensionable, and they would then make up the rest.
Yeah.
So if I'd worked full term, I wouldn't have got any more pension.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, who can compare? Who can blame about that? And crucially, I could still work.
Yeah. Hence St Thomas More.
Hence St Thomas More. Well, hence Chester actually, because I could work between make up between what I got for my pension and what the teacher's salary was, which would mean you're talking 2 days a week, basically. And a job popped up in Chester, 2 days a week. Bingo!
So that's at Queen's Park in Chester.
That was at Queen's Park in Chester.
And then...
And the other crucial thing about it was it had to be a yearly contract. It could never be permanent.
So it never pinned you in?
No, it never...
And it couldn't be?
And it couldn't be.
Yeah.
So I did a year, and then I was asked to do another year, so another
As you
contract
said.
started. And it just went on for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And then a job came up in St Thomas More, same thing, bingo.
Wasn't that to help a newly qualified teacher?
That was to help a newly qualified teacher, because Thomas More only really could support at that time, because of numbers in the subject, one art teacher.
Yeah.
The previous art teacher, John Cavanagh, had died, not unexpectedly, and he was a lovely guy. And there was a movement in schools at that time that if you were older, you didn't get a job. Because you cost more. So they used to appoint the cheapest of the cheap, which were the ones starting out. And they appointed this person and needed somebody to supervise her on her probationary year. So I was given 2 days a week.
And who was that person?
Oh, what was she called? Oh, crikey. I can't remember.
If it comes back, it's
Yeah, it comes back.
nice to mention her.
Yeah, she was lovely.
Yeah, she might still be there.
No, she isn't. I know she is.
Right, okay.
And
what did you find the difference to be from St Thomas More with maybe King's Grove, which is now the Oaks? Or what's that school like in comparison? Because it's a faith school, it's a Catholic faith school.
I always said in my career, I will never ever teach in a faith school. And I don't mean this anti-Catholic, I'm not anti-Catholic, or Protestant, I could have done either. I don't like faith schools. I don't really believe in them, but fundamentally. And I've moderated artwork in schools as an examiner in both camps, and I didn't like the climate that I can pick up.
You can feel it in schools.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't mean to say they're bad schools. Anyway, when I walked into Tommy Moore, I didn't feel that at all. I thought, what a lovely, warm, caring place. And it was. And I was off at the post. And the interview, I know I did a cracking interview. I just know it. I just couldn't.
When you know it goes well.
Yeah, you could tell from the word go, I was saying the right things. I was taking and there were a lot of people interviewing me, governors and like, and I just knew it was going well. And I thought, if I don't get this job, then
there's something wrong.
There's something wrong, and I got it.
And it was just because you were there for 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years.
So you maybe recall some of the teachers, because of course some of the audience will know some of these names and put these names to faces as they know. Jim McHugh is often a name.
Jim McHugh. Now, Jim McHugh, he wasn't the Jim McHugh who's the head. I never knew him.
Yeah. Oh right. Okay. So different.
He was the German teacher.
Yeah.
And he was the deputy head. Jim McHugh was black and white.
Yeah.
If Jim McHugh said you jump high, you jumped high.
I've got friends who will confirm that. They went to St Thomas More.
You knew where you stood with Jim McHugh,
and
I liked him for it because there's something a bit about me that I admire that.
I think the kids.
He was absolutely so assured about what he was doing. Boom. And I got on well with Jim.
Any others?
Oh God.
I know you did forget the names.
You forget the names, blooming heck.
And we're talking probably late 90s here, aren't we? Getting into the 2000s.
I'll tell you who I do remember.
Yeah.
The present head.
Right.
Kath Packham.
So as a teacher?
As a teacher.
Maybe a young teacher?
Young teacher. Well, younger than me anyway.
Yeah.
Young teacher. I started with her at Tommy Moore, and she taught in Gloucester as far as I can remember, which took me back to where commonality, and more important, she was a Man United fan.
Oh, is she?
Oh yeah, her and her husband were Man United fans, and so we used to talk about it because she used to go to the games because she had a season ticket. She used to come up from Gloucestershire to the games when they could.
Did you think to yourself, there's a future ahead, or it's not always easy to
I never thought
tell.
about it.
It's not always easy to say.
I never thought about it.
Yeah. I think sometimes people who you think really advertise themselves and want to go into headship actually may not be the best person for it.
No, I mean I got on well with Kath. And who else? Head of English. Oh gosh, your mum will know who it was. He retired about my time.
Yeah. Did you enjoy your career? Are you pleased you became a teacher? Are you pleased you work in Crewe schools?
Yes, I regret nothing.
Yeah, you regret nothing.
I regret nothing in my life.
Yeah.
I don't look back and think, I wish I'd done that, I wish I'd done that. Don't think that at all.
Do you regret the accident?
Well, I'd rather it hadn't happened. But can I say I regret it? Yes, I do, really.
Yeah.
But I don't blame it. It doesn't hang like a black cloud over me. It doesn't give me bad dreams. It doesn't. Sometimes I think, well, it's so long ago now. Sometimes I think, I wonder what it would be, how I could, smashing your legs to pieces.
I've never seen you run.
Exactly, I can't.
As a small child,
I can't.
You never run with me.
I can't.
Yeah.
If I'd been in another job, profession, it would have finished me.
Yeah.
But in teaching, it didn't.
Yeah, you can still do the job.
I could do the job.
Even though as an
I
art
mean,
teacher.
even though I lost
your arm.
I lost my right arm, for God's sake.
And you were right-handed.
I'm right-handed.
You're still right-handed.
I'm still right-handed. I'm very right-handed.
Yeah.
But I remember, not long after I came out, I went out and did some drawing. I went out to draw. And I sat down.
That's my dog.
And I sat down to draw and I thought, bloody hell, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
And I just started.
Yeah.
And that drawing is no different than the drawing I did pre-crash.
It's almost in you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whatever
So,
you use, you can still...
Well, you know as well as I do everything with my left hand.
Yeah. I forget.
Tying shoelaces for the lot.
Yeah, I forget you've got one arm.
Yeah.
And even growing up, I very rarely said, oh, do you need any help with that?
No, I don't.
No.
If I ever need help, I ask.
Yeah, which is rare.
I'm not ashamed not ashamed to do that.
And also, to your credit, and I wonder if the accident did change your perspective on this, I don't know, you don't mow.
No.
You have no time for mowners.
No, I hate it.
And you have no time either for airs and the graces and the superficial,
No.
Glitz and glamour.
No, but I never have had.
Right, so you never have.
Never have had.
You're not superficial in that sense.
No.
Materialistic.
Well, I hope not.
No. And you stay calm, you're very calm.
Well, that must be the tablets.
You've always been calm. You've always been calm.
Yeah.
So, we talked about Crewe schools in your career.
Yes.
How did you find Crewe Nantwich to bring up children? And we lived in Williston for about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah,
and then
in between the two.
And we moved out to Acton, which is where we are now. You've been here for, it was 1993.
30 years.
30 years.
30 years.
So, long-time resident of this house.
Yes.
And how did you find it as a place to raise children? Crewe Nantwich.
It's a rich environment.
Yeah.
You've got the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
There are things you can do in Crewe and get in Crewe which you can't get in Nantwich.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And they're both close together, which is an added advantage.
Yeah, I've always I know they're two separate towns with two distinct identities.
Very different.
But I often treat them as one, and I think that has its benefits.
Yes.
Not in all circumstances, but Crewe relies on Nantwich, Nantwich relies on Crewe, and what happens in Nantwich has an impact in Crewe, and vice versa.
Yes.
As well.
But I think about Crewe, it is a very, and I don't want to insult people or in any way whatsoever, but when I came first down here, it struck me as a very insular town.
Did you work as a teacher to try and maybe broaden that horizon for Crewe children?
Crewe children used to say to me, where do you live, sir? Well, I've never told people where I live in schools. It doesn't.
You don't do it.
I said, well, I live in Nantwich, which I lived towards Nantwich. And they said, what? You come all that way to work? So they were very much, well, you live round the corner.
Yeah.
You know, you work round the corner.
I remember you said to me that you would often be asked, or some occasionally asked, did you have books in the house?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And what was it? What was the conversation there?
Kids used to say, are you posh, sir? I've never understood that word really. And I said, what do you mean? Posh? Well, you know, do you have plants and books in the house? And I said, yeah. Oh, you're posh then.
Yeah.
You see, and now whether that happens now I don't know.
No.
I've been out of teaching too long.
But it happened then.
It happened.
This is in the 90s.
Yeah, it happened then.
How has Crewe Nantwich changed?
Right, well, I've seen Crewe go down the pan.
In what sense? Can you give an example?
Job opportunities, I mean, Rolls Royce.
But Bentley's there now.
Just a minute. Rolls Royce continually shed workers.
Stories were common, weren't they?
Yeah.
There were job cuts. And
everybody moaned about Crewe, about Rolls Royce, or Royces as they call it. The railways declined. It just seemed a bit of an unhappy place. Whereas Nantwich, which relied very much on old money, how I see it, went up. Fortunately now, Crewe, I think Crewe is on the up.
Well,
Bentley.
maybe a visit to the town centre, maybe.
Well, a visit to the town centre. The town centre is...
There's wider issues there,
it's
to be
not,
fair, which I think...
Yeah, it's not the town centre I remember originally.
Nor me.
But neither is Nantwich.
No, true. Without getting into that.
No, without getting into that, because there are other things.
Yeah.
I think a devastating blow that was dealt to Crewe recently was HS2.
And an opportunity missed.
Yeah, an opportunity missed, and I hope, it's my earnest hope, that some sort of high-speed line or new line will come from Birmingham, an upgrade of the present, but more because of capacity. The trains need more capacity on that route, and hopefully that will take up some of the slack that was going to be there with HS2.
I'm going to start negative, and that's only because I want to end on a positive.
Yeah.
What do you dislike about Crewe Nantwich? Maybe some of the ways that it is, or the ways it's changed.
The negative side, I can't speak for Crewe on this, but Nantwich, it's got so busy. Now that's probably good for traders.
Yeah.
The roads have got clogged. The houses are popping up like mushrooms. People have got to live somewhere. I get that.
It's happened quickly though, hasn't it?
It has happened very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think Crewe, the worst possible thing I think they did in Crewe was they built a retail park.
Which has been a success if you look at that in isolation.
The retail park is success. It's a success. It's busy, but at the expense of the town centre.
Yeah.
When Marks and Spencer's left the town centre, the town died, I think, in some respects. It's a pity.
They're big floor spaces to fill, aren't they?
Yeah.
BHS as well.
So, you know, I hope earnestly that Crewe does pick up. And it probably is doing far more than I'm aware of.
Would you go shopping in Crewe?
No.
Why?
Because there's nothing there in Crewe, but I don't go shopping anyway.
You hate shopping.
I hate shopping.
But if you had to go, would you
Online is a boon.
You're not much of a shopper anyway.
No. If I had to go shopping, would I go? No, I wouldn't.
Where would you go shopping?
Depending.
If you had to go?
Depending what I want.
Well, you need a new jacket. Where would you go? You don't want to buy it online.
Nantwich.
You would go to Nantwich.
Yes.
You wouldn't choose.
Or Chester.
Or Chester. Would you choose Chester before Crewe?
Oh yeah. I don't know the shops in Crewe now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you see, when we lived in Lancaster, that was shopping. It was absolutely dire. And people used to go down to Blackpool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the shopping was better in Blackpool.
Mm.
When I lived in Stockport, my mother always used to say, you don't go shopping in Stockport, there's no shops in Stockport.
Go to Manchester.
Go to Manchester.
Yeah.
Now, whether that is the same now, I don't know.
Yeah. What do you like about living here?
In this area,
Mm.
connectivity.
Mm. The geography of it.
The geography.
Yeah.
If I want to go to North Wales, to the beach, I can do so. Very easily. Not that we do. But we have done.
Yeah.
If I want to go to the Lake District and the Yorkshire Dales, I can do so quite easily. I can get anywhere in the world from Manchester Airport, which is what, 40 minutes away. I can get anywhere in the country from Crewe. I can get to London, which is what I used to do before I got a bit too old. Go down to London to the galleries and exhibitions. Crikey, an hour and a half on the train, you can't beat that, can you?
No. Yeah, the geography, and I think a lot of people agree with that. What about the places themselves?
Well, I've fallen out of love with Nantwich, really.
Is that because of how busy it's become?
Because it's lost some of its values.
It's not a quaint town that you moved into.
It's not a quaint country market town that it used to be.
Yeah.
That I remember when I first came.
Yeah. So what do you like about it?
I like the architecture.
It's still got a beauty to it.
It's still got a beauty to it.
Yeah.
And what do I like about Crewe? I mean, lift your eyes from the closed up shops and look at the cornices of many of the buildings and the terraced houses. They're fantastic when you look at it.
Yeah.
Architecturally, Crewe's quite rich, but you've got to know what you're looking for and you've got to look hard.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
It really is there.
Yeah. And the people, because you've been here over 30 years. You know a lot of people.
I know a lot of people around here. Surprisingly, there aren't that many dabbers in Nantwich. That is, people who were born and bred in Nantwich. Most of the people have come in from outside. Now, Crewe, I think probably there are more original people in Crewe now. Still.
That's just your impression.
That's my impression.
Yeah. If things change, people come and
Of course they
go.
do.
But I think it's fair to say that, and I notice this from Parents' Evening, I hear more accents that aren't that Crewe and Nantwich accent, that North West accent.
Yeah.
Southern accents, so people are coming in. And I think that's the success of Nantwich in particular. It's drawing people in, hence the house building. And, Nantwich is not isolated from that nationally, is it?
No.
It's been a success in terms of people are attracted to live there.
I can remember years and years ago, we lived in Lancaster at the time, and I can remember reading an article in some magazine or paper or whatever, that the government civil service was looking for a growth point in South Cheshire, Shropshire, Staffordshire area. Well, I think they found it. Crewe Nantwich.
Hence the geography.
Hence the geography, hence the connectivity.
And the house building.
Yeah.
It's been brilliant to talk about things with you. Thank you very much for your time. The first video on Crewe Nantwich TV. The first of many, we hope. It's been a real pleasure. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.